Alright, everyone. So, I am going to be going over a few different builds, but this is going to be my first episode of some dumb Diablo builds. I have attempted in the past to try to make little streams of actually creating one of these builds. None of them have lived up to something as dumb and fun as this build, so I'm going to be going over it. This is a Petrify build. Now, if you know anything about the skill Petrify in Diablo 4, it's a druid skill, and the first thing you'll notice is that it does 0 damage. So I'm going to kind of go over some skills, and then I'll go over how it works, and then what it's able to do. Now, this build is not at all optimized, and that's okay. So, starting out with skill tree. Basic skill doesn't matter. Literally just putting 2 points into Earth Spike just to unlock the core skills. Core skills, I went with Stone Burst, not for any particular reason other than I need a skill that can actually end up supplementing my damage in certain situations. And Stone Burst, gather stones beneath your enemies that detonate, dealing 67,000 damage. Channeling deals 4,000 damage and increases its size of the affected area up to 400%. Then going with Enhanced Stone Burst, Stone Burst's final explosion is 25%, is increased by 25% on enemies in the initial area. And then Stone Burst costs 66% more spirit, and its final explosion deals 50% increased damage. I maxed out Stone Burst. It's pretty good. And then went with Heart of the Wild for that 3 spirit and mostly to unlock Wild Impulses. This makes your core skills, my Stone Burst, deal 9% or cost 9% more spirit and deal 15% increased damage. Then I went with Predatory Instincts. Critical strike chance against close enemies is increased by 6%. Now, Stone Burst, not my main skill. Moving on to my defensive skills, I got a lot of stuff in this. This relies a lot on defensive skills. Went with Earthen Bulwark and actually maxed it out, which is weird. Most people don't do this. And I don't recommend that most people do. But for this build, you can. You can get away with it. Rocks around you for 9 seconds, granting a barrier that absorbs 81% of your max life. Then into Enhanced Stone Burst, it makes you unstoppable while it's active. That is needed. Then I went with Innate Earthen Bulwark. Rock Shrapnel flies outward when Earthen Bulwark is destroyed, dealing 21,000 damage to surrounding enemies. This damage is increased by barrier bonuses, which is pretty good. Then for the other active defensive skill, I went with Cyclone Armor because it has a passive effect of granting you 20% non-physical damage reduction, which is really good. And then when I do activate it, it is a small damage and pushback. Then I went with Enhanced Cyclone. This makes it so that enemies who are knocked back are slowed by 70%. And then Preserving Cyclone Armor. Every 10 seconds, Cyclone Armor intensifies, causing increased incoming damage to grant you 30% damage reduction for 2 seconds. That is super helpful. Then, as far as passives there, Backlash, you deal 12% increased damage for 5 seconds after casting a defensive skill. Then, Ancestral Fortitude, increase your damage, your non-physical resistance by 15%. And then Vigilance, grant 21% damage reduction for 6 seconds after casting a defensive skill. This has a 7-second cooldown. That is almost always active. This has an 8-second cooldown. I can always have this active. Then, moving on to companions. Not much here. Don't need much with companion stuff. Humanity. You deal 15% increased damage while in human form. You need that. And then, Feral Aptitude. You deal 9% increased damage while healthy. And another 9% increased damage while above 100% movement speed. That's super helpful because I like to move fast because I don't like to be slow in this game. It's just kind of boring if I am. Then, in Wrath skills, the only thing I went for is the Earth passives. That increases my Earth skill damage to stunned and slowed enemies and knocked back enemies. So 15% increased damage. Pretty good. Critical strikes with her skills fortify you for 9% of your max life. That's useful. Then this one, while you have fortify over 50% of your max life, your Earth skills deal 12% increased damage. That is useful. Then, moving onward. Petrify, max this out. Get that cooldown as low as you can, get that duration as high as you can. Because this is the bread and butter of this build. Encase all nearby enemies in stone, stunning them for 13 seconds. Casting Petrify resets all your non-ultimate cooldowns. So that Earthen Bulwark, when I cast Petrify, is suddenly off cooldown. Then you deal 30% increased multiplicative increased critical strike damage to enemies affected by Petrify. Against bosses, the critical strike damage bonus is increased to 50% and its duration to 22 seconds. That's really good. Then, Supreme Petrify. Killing an enemy affected by Petrify reduces its cooldown by 1 second. Hitting a boss with Petrify reduces its cooldown by 10. Petrify has an 8.5 second cooldown. Hitting a boss with it resets its cooldown completely, and I can immediately cast it again. I can always cast Petrify against bosses. And it's very quick to cast against enemies. I'm trying to get it faster though, because Petrify is my main source of damage. Then, as far as passives go, Defiance, Nature Magic skills deal 12% increased damage to elites. Pretty good. Just one Circle of Life for that little bit of heal from when I cast Stone Burst, but mainly to get Resonance. Nature Magic skills deal 6% increased damage. Triple this bonus if an Earth skill is cast, the next skill to cast after a Storm skill, and vice versa. Yeah. So when you switch, it makes it stronger. But I have it mostly for that, just damage increase. And then, on Catastrophe, you deal 15% increased damage for 8 seconds after casting an ultimate skill. That is really good, because I have an 8.5 second cooldown on my ultimate skill, so that's almost always active. And against the boss it is. Then, increase the amount of Fortify you gain from all sources by 15%, and you gain 9% damage reduction while fortified. That is really useful. And then, moving down here, Earthen Might is my key passive. This isn't super important, but it's what I got. Damaging enemies with Earth skills has up to a 15% chance to restore all of your spirit and cause your attacks to be guaranteed critical strikes for 5 seconds. This chance is increased by 15% for crits and 15% if the target is stunned or immobilized. They are always immobilized or stunned from Petrify, unless they become unstoppable. But that's the skills. I don't need that, actually. I don't know why I grabbed that on accident. Either way. Paragon board. Okay. Just going over the basics. I'm not going to read everything on these. You guys can read them. On the first board, I went with the Glyph Spirit for the increased critical strike damage. I got all of the rare nodes, and I am trying to get all of the dexterity bonuses here. They are needed because that's damage multipliers. Then, moving upward, I went with the Earthen Devastation. Earth skills deal 10% multiplicative increased critical strike damage. And that bonus is increased by 20% of my damage versus crowd control. Bonus up to 60%, which it is at 60%. And that's because I added Territorial for damage to close enemies and damage reduction from close enemies. As far as the rare nodes I got on here, the main one is the Suffused Resilience, damage reduction, and resistance to all elements. This is like the best Paragon node there is, in my opinion. I love this stuff. It's super defensive, super needed. And then over here, armor and max life. That's also useful. I always get the 2 rare nodes next to the glyph socket. This one's earth power or earth damage, and the damage to crowd control. I also got a little bit of resistance max or to all elements and max life, because that is also useful. Oh, I didn't go over the first board. I always get all the nodes on the first board. Then, moving on to my second board, it's the Ancestral Guidance board. After spending 75 spirit, you deal 40% increased damage for 5 seconds. Your ultimate skill deals 1% increased damage per spirit when cast. That is useful, because I'm always casting my ultimate. And that's just increasing its damage. The node I put in here is Tectonic. That is basically like Spirit, but for Earth skills only. Increase critical strike damage with them. That's useful. Got the node, 40% damage and 56% core damage around it. Because I do use my core skills a little bit. Then I got the row nodes for resource generation and max life, resistance to all elements in max life, and then max spirit and spirit on kill. Not absolutely needed, to be honest. Then, moving downward, I went with constricting tendrils. Nature magic skills have a 40% chance to entangle the enemy with vines, immobilizing them for 2 seconds, and poisoning them for 300% of the base damage dealt over 4 seconds. This is needed. You'll see why on the next board. Then the glyph I got was just human. It gives raw damage for being in human form and damage reduction for being in human form. And that got me damage from this one and nature magic damage from this rare node. So that's what I got there. As far as the other rare nodes, I got another damage reduction and resistance to all elements. Super helpful. And then resistance to all elements and armor. Also pretty helpful. I haven't gotten all the other nodes on that board. I might not. We'll see. Then moving on to the 5th and final board, and why I had to get that nature magic skills can make enemies poisoned and immobilized is heightened malice. While a poisoned enemy is nearby, you deal 35% increased damage, plus an additional 5% for each additional poisoned enemy. This is helpful because now my nature magic skills can poison enemies pretty consistently. As far as the glyph I got there, it was Protector, bonus to rare nodes, and damage reduction while you have an active barrier. This could probably get into a better glyph socket, to be honest, because this gives me damage and willpower, and that's the only thing this is getting me for those rare nodes. But it's decent. As far as the other rare nodes I got on this board, damage reduction from poisoned enemies and healing received, and then resistance to all elements and armor. And then finally, poison resistance and max poison resistance. Again, this build not at all optimized. Like, it is not. So don't assume that this is the peak that it can be at. This build can easily be better. I just haven't wanted to grind for it yet. But that is all the skills. Now I'm going to go over some of my gear and tempers. Now, spirit boons first, actually. Spirit boons, I went with just on the deer one, I got the 15% movement speed and 15% impairment reduction. Didn't really need these other ones. Yeah, didn't really need the other ones. So movement speed, that's giving me that feral aptitude bonus, so I'm moving faster. Guaranteed, so I'm doing more damage. And then in the eagle, I went with 2 boons in this one. One for increased critical strike chance and lucky hit chance. And then the other one for critical strike damage. Those pair super nicely. I don't need attack speed. I don't need the max life. But those 2 bonuses, really good. In the wolf, I don't use companion, so I don't care about pack leader. Dealing damage has a 15% chance to fully restore spirit. Didn't need it. Because I don't care about spirit. Don't need to fortify. But I do need extend the duration of your ultimate skills by 35%. That's going to increase my Petrify stuff. Then on this one, Snake, I just went with Obsidian Slam. Every 6 casted attack will cause your next Earth skill to overpower. I'm not dealing Storm skills, so I don't care about this one. I'm not dealing with Shapeshifting, and then Nature Magic skills have a 10% chance to reduce the cooldown of your ultimate by 2 seconds. That'd be nice, but not needed. This one's just consistent overpower, is the thing. But this wouldn't be a bad thing either. Calm Before the Storm wouldn't be bad. And I could always test that out later. But moving on to gear. This build needs 3 main uniques to even function properly. If everything goes right, I might be able to swap one of them out, but I doubt it. The main one it needs is, since it's a Petrify build, you need the Basilisk. It gives damage to crowd-controlled enemies. It gives attack speed for Earth skills. It gives critical strike damage. It gives physical damage, critical strike chance against stunned enemies. Petrify stuns enemies, so that's basically a 60% critical strike chance increase, which is really good. Then, whenever you hit a healthy enemy with an Earth skill, Petrify them for 3 seconds. Against bosses, this can only occur once every 5 seconds instead. That doesn't matter. What matters is petrifying an enemy deals 5,000 physical damage to them. And I can always cast Petrify, especially against bosses, so that's really good. Then moving on to the next required unique is Iridia's Inexorable Will. Gives 13% willpower, 17% lucky hit chance, at least the way I have it. Gives some damage to close enemies. The main one that you want is ultimate skill cooldown reduction. This is super helpful because whenever casting an ultimate skill, like Petrify, gain 5 seconds and again 5 seconds after, you pull in distant enemies and deal 800 physical damage to them. This damage is increased by 10% per 1 point of willpower you have. That essentially, given what I have in my willpower, means it deals about 121,000 damage. Super helpful. The next required item, but you might be able to swap it out with another unique, is Harlequin Crest. The main thing here is that damage reduction and cooldown reduction. That's the main one. Cooldown reduction, not damage reduction. I was just reading damage reduction. But 40% cooldown reduction, super helpful. What that alone is doing is like my ultimate skill, 8.5 second cooldown. Without Harlequin Crest, 16. It doubles. So I need this. So, I need this item. It just gotta lower your cooldown reduction is the main thing. I went with the rune word of Lith Zek. Standing still for 1.2 seconds will reduce the cooldown of my ultimate by 1 second. Super helpful. If I wasn't using Harlequin Crest, or if you don't have it, I would probably go with Vasili's Prayer. And then I'd probably stack for trying to get some werebear stuff going on, because that would basically make you always in werebear form. And that could be helpful. I wouldn't really worry about like Mad Wolf's Glee or anything like that. Or like, yeah, no. Wouldn't care about those. But, then, from there, moving on to my other 2 uniques. These ones are not needed, but they're decent. Rakanoth's Wake. This gives, movement speed, which is nice. Gives some non-physical damage, which is okay. I mostly do physical damage, so that doesn't matter too much. Gives some resistances, which is nice. Gives some cooldown reduction, which is nice. And then, whenever you cast a skill with a cooldown, you explode, dealing 2,000 fire damage, which is pretty good. Then, moving upward, Tybalt's Will. 34% damage reduction while unstoppable. I got lucky with these. And then, you deal 20% increased damage while unstoppable and for 5 seconds after. And if you remember right, Earthen Bulwark grants unstoppable for its duration. So, that's pretty nice. So I'm basically always unstoppable because I could always cast Earthen Bulwark. And that's pretty good. Then, moving on to the other items. Chestplate, you just want kind of a basic one. Willpower, max life, and then any other stat you might think you need. I tempered Earthen Bulwark cooldown and Petrify duration onto this. And then I gave it, Earthen Bulwark is increased by 6 seconds. In addition, killing an enemy replenishes its barrier amount. Then for the rune word, I went with Zan Ohm, which makes it so that whenever I cast my ultimate skill 4 times, I invoke the Barbarian's Warcry for 6 seconds, giving me another multiplicative damage increase, which is nice. As far as gloves, just some basic gloves. You want some crit damage. You basically want to max crit damage whenever you can. This is willpower, max life, crit damage, so decent. Then I tempered Petrify duration and crit damage onto it. And I put, you deal 25% increased damage while you have a barrier with the conceded aspect, which is pretty good. Then, as far as amulets go, just willpower, crit chance, damage, or crit damage, pretty good. Temper crit damage and Petrify cooldown onto it so that you can cast your ultimate even faster. And then tempered onto it, the newer one, the casting an ultimate skill, increases your damage by 15% for 8 seconds and gains 2 additional skill ranks, which is pretty good. Then, lastly, ring, and again, this ring could be better. Willpower, attack speed, crit chance. It doesn't really need the attack speed, to be honest. And then, critical strike damage and Petrify cooldown reduction are what I tempered, and I added in Stone Burst, deal 23% increased damage when cast at or above 75 spirit. It is immediately at its maximum size. So this item is probably the worst item I have on this build, but it's decent. And what that means is I can go up, and if I'm going to go and say, let's say I want to fight a boss. This build is mostly impressive against the boss. Now, I'm just going to be standing here, and I'm going to be spamming Petrify and Earthen Bulwark. Now remember, Petrify does no damage, and neither does Earthen Bulwark. I mean, technically it does, but that's not what you're going to be seeing. So I can do this. Now, I spam up my Fortify. I'm at max Fortify already. I'm doing 16 million damage there, 19 million damage there, and I am spamming 20 million damage. This is a skill that has an 8-second cooldown, and I am able to spam it. And that is what this build is capable of doing. It's ridiculous, it's stupid, but most importantly, it's actually just a whole lot of fun. And that's it. Because yeah, he's not taking any more damage. So this build, not the best. It doesn't do the most damage. It's just a stupid fun build to play. Because it shouldn't work, and it does. Now, that was against just a boss training dummy. I don't feel like summoning a boss right now, because they take a little bit. And then, I'm going to briefly show you just how much damage it does against just some regular enemies. And then, I'm going to end up calling it after that. But, this is just walking around. And, let's see here. Yeah, some enemies. Bam. As you see, I can't spam it as much. But it does have a an 8-second cooldown, and I'm able to cast it more than once every 8 seconds. There you go. But yeah, that is how this build works. It is really fun to play, mostly because I took some skills that shouldn't exist and I made them work. Over here, thing doesn't matter. But yeah. Hold on, wait a minute. I gotta test one thing really quick before I end it, and that's this thing. Your next skill is... Okay, so that doesn't trigger it. I know Stone Burst will, but I want to see, does this. Oh. Your next Earth skill will overpower. That's an Earth skill. That's an Earth skill. Those aren't guaranteed overpowers. I think that's this boon not triggering properly. So I think I actually can proc that one over to there. Yeah. Alright. But that has been this build. It's been a whole lot of fun. It's really stupid, but it's also really fun. I highly recommend this, especially before they make the game so much harder. I'll see if I can end up keeping this in Season 8, but I'll see. Overall, though, it's a fun one. I also love this armor set as a druid. It's so cool. But that has been my first dumb Diablo build that is truly set. And yeah, I hope everyone has had a good day. And I hope you guys have fun testing out other dumb builds that nobody else is willing to test out, because that's what I'm going to be uploading. It's just dumb builds that nobody uses that are just fun to make. I'll also make some like actual good ones that people do use, but this has just been my first one that was stupid but fun. But everyone, have a good day, take care, see you around.